Good evening. From the Serengeti to the Arctic, nature is disappearing at landscape scales, while parks have become less parks and more killing fields. We need bold and comprehensive ideas to turn this around. I'd like to share with you a 2-minute clip about Africa ASAP airships, and then talk this evening a little bit about how they are relevant to the Arctic. Two years ago, on August 18th, my friend and partner Wayne Lauder was targeted, tracked, and brutally killed by highly organized international criminals because he was interfering with their cash flow. Wayne had turned around the industrial-scale slaughter of elephants in Tanzania. Today, others at the PAMS Foundation continue this dangerous work, catching some 80 criminals a month. Jane Goodall mentioned that Wayne has inspired many. I'm one of those that he inspired. It's a good word, inspired, inspiration. We've been studying the challenge in Africa for 7 years. The lessons learned in these vast landscapes apply to other geographies. For example, the opening of the Northwest Passage to heavy shipping will spell disaster for the belugas, bowhead whales, polar bears, and others. But first, let me share with you how an aerial view changed my life and led to the creation of Africa ASAP. Much of my misspent youth was spent flying balloons in Switzerland. Flying at 20,000 feet, I could see glaciers melting like ice cream cones as black soot from different cities in Europe was deposited on top of them. A warning as to what is happening in the poles. At lower altitudes, you could see how forests and lakes had been devastated by acid rain. Most of us don't think about biodiversity at those altitudes, except when a Ruppel's vulture flies into a plane and Africa at 37,000 feet and knocks out the engine. But common cranes soar at 33,000 feet, and even Bard's geese are seen flying over Mount Everest. The aerial view you get from flying low and slow can be a very intimate experience. On December 7th, 1991, in the dead of winter, on what happened to be the last day of the Soviet Union, I took off from Red Square in a balloon. I was there at the invitation of the Soviet government to bring awareness to atmospheric pollution, thus the Ozone Society banner on the balloon. It was then that I began to understand the real advantage of flying lower and slower. See, when you fly low and slow, you see not just with your eyes, you're not just gazing, but also you can see with your heart. Drifting over rooftops amongst the city darkened in a shroud of midwinter snow squalls, I had a unique understanding of what was happening on that historic day. I saw lines of people wrapped around blocks, city blocks, just waiting for a few pieces of bread or maybe vodka. Tanks crawling around the city, personnel carriers zooming like ants, but that's not what I remember most. What I remember most were the warm smiles and laughter, especially of the children. In this next picture, this was the first flight I did from Red Square. I'm in a small balloon called a cloud hopper. I don't have a basket. I'm attached to the propane tank, and it's very good for city flying because you can get in and out of situations quickly. I'm about to land in the Moscow bird market, and I was quickly surrounded by, maybe 80 people, but in 5 minutes I was surrounded by maybe 500 people. And that's how I remember the last day of the Soviet Union, warm hearts and cold noses. Our airship technology is geographically suited to almost any vast terrain. It would be ideal in the Arctic during the summer because we have almost non-stop sunlight for solar power. Average wind speeds range little more than they are in London that time of year, 8 to 16 miles per hour. In 1942, the U.S. Navy suffered its biggest defeat in history. It wasn't in Pearl Harbor where we lost 80,000 tons of shipping. It was off the coast of North Carolina, Virginia, where we lost 4 million tons of shipping in 1 year, 1942. So the Navy responded with the right tool to fix the problem. And that's really all that we are. We're the right tool to a situation. They responded by building airships. And this is what's key. By the end of 1942, Admiral Kurt Donitz recalled every single U-boat back to Germany. The airship would be over a convoy, and the German U-boat, they could maybe sink 1 or 2 boats, but they knew that they were finished because the airship had a magnetometer on it. It could easily spot a big hunk of metal in the water. U-boats were usually less than 100 feet down anyway, so you could really see them from the air. So the deterrence was huge. And I can't overstate how serious the problem was. We could not get our ships over to Europe because we couldn't get them off the coast. And even there was a German U-boat off the coast of Palm Beach, and they would row ashore and get bread at night at the local bakery and then come back. Their biggest problem was a resupply of torpedoes. They called it the Great American Turkey Shoot. So please remember this, the deterrence that the airship has. This is someone, I'll just continue here for a moment. The U.S. military continues to rely heavily on aerostatic technology. At one time, when we had 60 operating bases in Afghanistan, every forward operating base had a aerostat over it. So really, it's the right tool for the job. And the job being monitoring vast tracts of harsh, dangerous, and remote terrain. Now, this is a question that everybody asks right away. So this is a big, fat, like a guppy floating in the sky. Isn't it easy to shoot down? The internal and external pressure is less than 1%. So you can fill it with bullets, but the leakage is very small. I was speaking to a Goodyear blimp pilot a couple years ago, and he mentioned that every time they come into land, they have maybe 40 or 50 bullet holes in their ship. It's, because they fly low, they want people to see them. And but they don't know that they've been hit. You have people who go around and actually look for the bullet holes. We fly at 4,000 feet, so an AK-47, if you shoot it straight up like that, it won't quite reach the airship. If it did, it would bounce off. And you see, guns are made for shooting horizontal, and it's very difficult to hit something up in the air that might be 4,000 feet up and 3 or 4 miles away. It's virtually impossible. And of course, if somebody shoots a handheld missile at us, I would think that would be a very good thing because we would actually see who did it, and it would bring down an unmanned craft rather than a manned craft, and it would be one less missile off the market. We're cost effective. The airship was solar powered with a hydrogen fuel cell is the next version, and it has a backup diesel on it. But even using the backup diesel full time, we use less fuel than my Prius does. We use about 1 gallon an hour. You see, the key thing with an airship is it's aerostatic as opposed to aerodynamic. An airplane, a helicopter, you have to use a lot of energy to stay up in the air. But with the airship, it's filled with helium, and so it just stays up on its own without using any energy. So all you need is a little something to push it along. The drones, actually, the ones that they're using in Tanzania, they can only stay up for an hour and a half, and they have 9 people that operate them. One drone, 9 people. We can stay up for a week at a time. We can cover an area the size of close to Colorado, 100,000 square miles in a week. So again, it's the appropriate technology for protecting vast areas of biodiversity. So we're energy efficient, of course, solar powered, and we're aerostatic. Oh my goodness. I'm almost out of time. I've not been looking at the time. Could I have a few more minutes? Is that possible? Thank you. Sorry. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay, so, right. So we can monitor 100,000 square miles on each mission. This is a sister ship. I've been flying in a NATO country for 7 years without incident. Then poachers will no longer own the night as they do. Again, it's deterrence and catching the bad guys before they commit a crime. So a little while ago, we're flying over the elephant sanctuary in Tennessee. We're at 8,000 feet, 5-6 miles away. We could see elephants, individual people. The guy who's building our airship, Per Lindstrand, first to cross the Atlantic, Pacific, has built hundreds of airships, aerostats for the military. He built the parachute for the Mars lander, received the highest aviation award, the Harmon Trophy at the White House. He knows what he's doing. And this is the important part I wanted to get to. So the technology is needed in the Arctic, particularly along the Northwest Passage, where change is coming fast, but where there are few observers to make sure it is not destroyed. The issues are different from Africa, but they are big, and someone needs to pay attention. In the Arctic, warming is dramatic, and everything is changing: the land, ice, sea, people, animals. In Africa, the crisis got ahead of all of us. In the Arctic, we have a chance to get ahead of it, but time is running out. So it can be run from one small station like this. And along the Northwest Passage, there are critical meeting places for highly social whales. These belugas, actually 3 days ago, 2 inflatables from an icebreaker came racing into this very bay and disrupted the social interaction of about 700 of these belugas who fled in panic. If we had been there, we might have prevented it from happening. Our goal is to save lives, save species, biodiversity, and be present wherever there is a need for deterrence and accountability. The deep and abiding look at the world that we offer is vital because the health of the planet depends both on the greatest of species and on the least. Join us. Thank you.